Hello, this is Juan J. Hill here today in Juan Valdez, the Intermark Mall, Kuala Lumpur, together with Brian Dickinson. Thank you very much, Brian, for joining me today.
You're welcome.
I just want to start out by asking a little bit more about Brian Dickinson, a little bit about your experience in technology, change management, and how all this passion for sustainability and technology started out.
Okay, so this is going to be a short interview because so I have to paraphrase, I guess. Brian Dickinson. I'm a country boy. I was born and bred on the farm, so I guess that's probably driven a lot of my passion or why I enjoy agriculture. But I spent most of my working career in corporate organisations like GrainCorp and Namoi Cotton, some of the bigger agri organisations, consulting in Wilmar, those sorts of businesses. But I've always still had that passion for the farmer. Because the farmer really ultimately, they're the guys that grow it. They're the ones that do the work.
From your childhood?
Yeah, I guess from my childhood. But
were your parents farmers or?
My father worked on the farm, so my family, well, my uncle owns the farm, and my family worked on the farm. My mother worked on the farm, and I was brought up on the farm. So yeah, look, it probably comes from the childhood, but I've just always found the country and agriculture is one of those things that it's evolving all the time, and it's been held back in the past. It's one of those forgotten things we all focus on, innovation and bits and pieces, but agriculture's always been left behind because of its remoteness and everything else. But I think today that's the ball game's changed. Cost of technology is cheaper, accessible to everyone. So it's available, and that's what's changing the industry. And obviously, we've just discussed, market ultimately drives it, price.
Yeah.
But as we see markets change and things like palm oil, it becomes commodity in demand, investment comes in, and we see it evolve. And that's what we're seeing today. We've seen it in wheat, we've seen it in the US and things like corn and all those sort of crops. But we are now seeing it in things like palm oil, where the focus is there. It's in everything we eat, and it's the market. It's going to drive it, and we'll see innovation, and that to me is exciting. And it's going through change.
Why do you think we are very accustomed to think that innovation or technology or whatever is for the cities or for the factories and not for the farmers or plantation?
Good question. Again, I think it's just that in the cities or organisation, it's all about factory automation, things like that, and people see that's where the money is. But I mean, your article recently stated that the improvements aren't gained, or significant improvements aren't gained in the mills and the refineries now. That's been done.
Yeah.
It's in the plantation, and in the plantation. Look at small landholders today. The average CPO metric tonnes is between 200 kilograms and 2 metric tonnes. All right. The middle guy, the industry average is 3.5 to 3.8 metric tonnes of CPO per hectare. RSPO with certification is saying their minimum standard is 5. All right. The bigger guys are doing about 9, or somewhere between 9 to, I think. Lab studies can get 16.
Yes. So
16 is about the number, but we're still talking about the little shareholder, little guy, doing 200 to 1, or 200 kilograms to 2. Imagine if we could double that. They represent 40% of the market. If we could double that production, and let's face it, they do everything probably correct. They're only small blocks of land. Why is their production down? It's not because they're doing it wrong, it's the timing of the process.
So timing is key here.
Timing is key. How long does FFB sit in a block? Every hour it sits in a block, it degrades. So the oil loss is there. So if we can just improve process in the small landholder, we can actually improve global production. And if it represents 40% of global production is small landholders, then 40% of the market can be improved quickly just with process improvement.
Okay, Brian, we've been discussing for a couple of hours now, so very interesting discussion. So how we can integrate timing in the technology deployment in the plantation, or how you can describe what is the incremental implementation of technology, how to start from scratch, something very basic, towards something more complex or complicated, but something that can allow the farmer to go from probably nothing to something relevant, or
Yep.
you know.
Yeah, and one that doesn't matter what the industry is. We've all been through it, right? Mining went through it, that evolution. But for me, I'm working around agriculture all the time, so it's all about precision ag and things like that. And in countries like the US, it's there. But what I discovered in Asia and in Colombia is that it's still manual. It's small guys, manual. And if we came in, and I've just spent 10 years with one of the big consulting firms, and they sell one of the prestigious solutions, and it's expensive. It's also very complex in the way it works. If I brought that to a small landholder or a medium-sized landholder, it would fail. It just won't happen. So it's incremental change. And as we were discussing earlier, for me and how I got involved, say SimpleAgri, I want to do agricultural innovation, and I want to help in terms of consulting productivity and how do we improve. And a fundamental thing I see is that there's nowhere that we could really just measure process.
Yeah.
And I came across SimpleAgri, and what I liked about it was it uses everyday technology, right? Web browser, it's just a cloud-based database. It uses a mobile phone with a Google app to actually get field. It's remote, it'll work. People can afford this today, all right?
Yeah,
10 years
absolutely.
ago, they were all custom rugged devices. Nowadays, it's that. If it breaks, it's not that expensive to fix it. So all of a sudden it's affordable. Everyone today has internet. Right? I don't care where. They mightn't have connectivity all the time, but everyone has it. So cloud-based apps are real. So all SimpleAgri is a way of capturing the process. And if you can capture a process, you can measure a process. It's not about saying, I'm going to go to GPS, to drones, to everything precision, because if you do that, people get scared, it won't happen, right? If you can take them on a journey, for example, what we're trying to do in a plantation in Sabah is on the ground, we're not changing what they do. They still come in, they get their instructions, they go to the field, they do their work, they come back, it's done. But what we're doing is we're putting initially paper systems to still record it, but they're doing a plan, and that plan gets put into paper. They just fill in, right? They're not having to record it, or they just fill it in, brings it back in. Last week, the same plantation owner is now telling me he wants to put smart devices out there so they can record it in the field. And it's incremental change. I told you he had work orders for a whole month.
Yeah.
And that gave him a capture of everything for the month. But then he wanted to get down to, is it happening 2 or 3 times a month? All we did was create an additional work order. Yes. No extra data entry, just an additional work order. And now he's measuring it on a weekly basis. So what's now happening with his organisation? It's getting more efficient, but it's incremental. And he consumes it as his business matures. And that's the issue that I've found in all the organisations I work in. You have organisations that see a vision and they want to implement the vision, but they underestimate the change management to actually get to the vision.
Yeah.
And because they underestimate the change management, it fails.
So
if you can actually incrementally implement change, they will actually accelerate it. So you get the basics, you involve them in the process of actually measuring it, and you improve their livelihoods, and then they will teach you how to improve what they're doing. And you will see, as I said, this landholder, I'm not using smart devices. This is the only thing that'll work.
Yeah.
In 10 weeks' time, he's changed from that to, I'm now going to Sepang put in the smart devices. He's not going to do it in the other ones because he said they're not ready yet. But when he sees that Sepang's doing well, and he's got the results to prove it, and I don't know how he's going to do it. Maybe he rewards the Sepang guys based on productivity.
Correct.
What's going to happen in the other plantations? They'll want the same reward, so they will evolve. So it'll be incremental change. If you implement the whole thing, I think it'll fail.
Yeah. So we also have been discussing about change management. This is one of my favorite topics. And then I also really like this saying that people don't resist change, they resist being changed. And the example that you brought up about the guy that first he thought that paper was the only way to do it, and then it was just like an incremental change, like a soft starter, but now he wants to go even further. And then most likely the other plantations are going to try to follow the same model until they catch up. So also in change management, you've mentioned before that there's something so-called second generation. So can you probably explain more about how is the second generation going to do the transformation of the palm oil industry, and especially in technology-wise?
A very sensitive subject too. Look, I think palm and these long-term crops are unique, all right? You look at the other industries like sugar and rice, wheat, they're annual crops, so they've evolved quickly, they move quickly. Palm has evolved slowly, and you've got people, first generation, that have taken nothing. You know, a lot of them were old cacao plantations, they've put in palm and they've taken it, and some of these guys are multi-millionaires. You know, they've made a lot of money out of it. There's nothing really, and given the conditions of the market back then, what they've done is amazing, right? We can't sit there and go, they're old, they're doing it wrong. They didn't do it wrong, they did it right, because they've made a lot of money. And what's happened now is they've also seen that the future is going to change, and all their second generation is being educated, highly educated, a lot more highly educated than I am. And those guys are now starting to come back, guys and girls coming back into the workforce or into those organisations, and they're now learning from the first generation, but also taking their learnings. And what's happening is we are seeing the transition into the second generation, and they're learners. They adapt. They look at what's happening in the market. They look at what's happening in their operations, and they're prepared to adapt, because the truth is that's what the market is today. If we look at IT, go back, you know, we all bought IBMs or DEX or whatever the big ones. We ended up with one sort of platform, SAP as an ERP. What's happening today? Cloud apps. There's hundreds of them, and we change all the time, from Facebook to this to that, and we evolve quickly. That's what it's about.
Yes.
This younger generation or second generation, they're equipped. They think that way. So I believe what we will see is, as the first generation hands to the second generation, we will see again an acceleration of technology. And it's an acceptance of the change, right? No resistance. And that's going to be key.